Hey friends, Mrs. Dunn here. Mrs. Fratt and I thought that it would be a fun idea to do a little bit of reading that wasn't necessarily required for you guys. So we picked a couple fun stories, and today we're going to do a little bit of a compare and contrast with them. One story you guys have probably heard a million times in your life, and that's the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And the other story that we're going to read is called Little Red and the Very Hungry Lion. So we'll read that here in just a second. Now, the cool thing is the story of Little Red Riding Hood is considered a fairy tale. And when you hear a fairy tale, you can read 3 or 4 of the same story, but they're all different. And that's because fairy tales are stories that are told over and over and over by different people, passed down. And as they're told over and over and over, they change a little bit each time. So I wanted to show you guys how fairy tales are told and how people take these stories and change them just a little bit to, first of all, make them more interesting, and second of all, to show you how as things are passed, they change. I don't know if you guys have ever played the game Telephone before. It's where you sit in a circle and someone whispers something in the person beside of them's ear, and then that person passes it to the next person, passes it to the next person, and before you know it, the circle is complete. And when it comes back to the person who originally told the story, it's usually completely different than where it started. So we're going to do a little bit of compare and contrast, and we're going to see how similar and how different these two stories are, even though they're basically the same story. So first we're going to do Little Red Riding Hood. And this is just a version of Little Red Riding Hood that I printed off the internet. There she is, Little Red. And it says, "There once was a girl known as Little Red Riding Hood. She always wore a red riding cape wherever she went. One day she decided to go visit her dear grandmother, who lived deep in the woods. When her mother packed a basket of treats, she warned her not to talk to strangers along the way. As Little Red Riding Hood happily strolled through the woods, she did not notice a sneaky wolf stalking her through the trees. The wolf pretended to be lost and asked Little Red Riding Hood for directions. The wolf seemed harmless enough, so Little Red Riding Hood not only spoke to him, she also revealed where she was going. The wolf rushed ahead to beat her to her grandmother's house, gaining entry by pretending to be her dear granddaughter. Having locked her grandmother in a closet, the wolf waited for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. When she knocked on her grandmother's door, she was greeted by a strange voice. "Come in, dear," said the wolf, as the wolf lay in bed, wearing one of her grandmother's nightgowns. Little Red Riding Hood thought her grandmother sounded and looked strange. "What big ears you have," she said. "Better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "What big eyes you have," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Better to see you with, my darling," the wolf replied. Your teeth are large and sharp as knives," Little Red Riding Hood exclaimed. "The better to eat you with," growled the wolf as he jumped up and lunged at the girl. Luckily, Little Red Riding Hood had practiced self-defense and grabbed a broom to fend off the wolf. Surprised by the girl's bravery, the wolf ran off with his tail between his legs. Little Red Riding Hood freed her grandmother from the closet, and her grandmother made Little Red Riding Hood promise not to talk to strangers ever again. All right, so that's one version of Little Red Riding Hood. You guys may have heard it a little bit different, but that's kind of the basic layout of that story. So we have the little girl, Little Red Riding Hood, going through the woods, meeting the wolf and telling him where she's headed. And of course he beats her there, pretends to be grandma. But luckily, Little Red was smart and she was able to get the wolf out of the house without being hurt and without getting grandma hurt. So keep that one in mind as we look and read Little Red and the Very Hungry Lion. And this one's kind of funny too, so I think you guys will really enjoy it. So Little Red and the Very Hungry Lion. Look how pretty the pictures are. Love this story. This is Little Red. Today, she's going to be gobbled up by a lion. This is the lion. Well, that's what he thinks is going to happen anyway. There they are. There's the lion. And there's Little Red. One hot morning, Auntie Rosie woke up covered in spots. There was only one thing for them: spot medicine. Ring, 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 ring. Oh dear, said Little Red when she heard the news. I'll come right away. So there's Auntie Rosie and Little Red. So we have some differences already. Okay, instead of Grandma, we have Auntie Rosie, and there's Little Red. And instead of Grandma wanting a visit and needing food, Auntie Rosie has spots all over her. Hopefully you guys can see her spots. So she put some spot medicine in her basket and waved goodbye to her daddy. All right, so there's some differences here too. There's Little Red. She's got her basket. Her basket, like I said, it had food in it in Little Red Riding Hood. This time she has spot medicine. And it wasn't her mom that sent her. It was her dad. It was a very long way to Auntie Rosie's house. Little Red walked under the giraffes, over the sleepy crocodiles, and past the chattering monkeys. Okay, so she's not in the forest this time. She's in, what do you call that? Like the jungle? I think she's in the jungle. Let's talk about this word right here. Chattering. Chattering. Past the chattering monkeys. What do we think chattering means? If the monkeys are chattering, it means that they are speaking, or in their case, making noises quickly without really saying anything that's really important. So they're just making a lot of noise. She crept around the termite mounds under the leaping gazelles. Then she caught a ride on an elephant. Wiggled her way around the hippos and warthogs and waved hello to the meerkats. So I'm going to say, not really necessarily the jungle, but have you guys ever heard of the African savanna? Yeah. Oh, hello, purred the lion. Where are you going? To visit my auntie who's covered in spots, said Little Red. In the time it took for his tummy to rumble, the very hungry lion had cooked up a very naughty plan. So there he is. So he stopped Little Red to talk too, just like the wolf did. And here is his very clever plan. 1, sneak off to Auntie Rosie's house. 2, hide her in a cabinet. Where did they hide Grandma? 3, dress up as Auntie Rosie. They did that too. 4, wait for a bit. 5, jump up and eat Little Red. 6, eat Auntie Rosie for dessert. Last step, well done, you're a very clever lion. And he rushed off to put his plan in action. There it is. Now, that sounds a lot like the steps that the wolf took in Little Red Riding Hood. We know that he beat Little Red to the house, that he dressed up as Grandma, he hid Grandma, he waited for her to come, talk to her a little bit, and then he was going to eat her, but he didn't get the chance. So let's see if the lion gets the chance to eat Little Red and Auntie Rosie. Hopefully not. When he arrived, the very hungry lion stuffed Auntie Rosie into a cabinet and locked the door. Then he squeezed himself into one of her nightgowns and covered himself all in spots. So there he is, putting Auntie Rosie in the cabinet. And there he is dressed up as her, and he has all of his little spots. Do you think he looks like Auntie Rosie? Of course, when Little Red arrived, she realized right away it wasn't Auntie Rosie sitting in the bed. She quickly looked around and spotted her auntie peeking through a gap in the cabinet. When Little Red decided that she was going to teach that naughty lion a lesson. So there's Little Red coming in, and there's the lion in the bed. And I don't know if you guys could see it, but if you look it's probably too dark, but if you look super, super close, you could just see Auntie Rosie's eye in that cabinet. What do you think Little Red's gonna do to the lion? "Oh, Auntie," cried Little Red, "what tangled hair you have!" And before the very hungry lion could even lick his lips, Little Red had brushed and combed and twisted and braided until the lion had a lovely new look. This had not been part of the lion's plan. There he is. He opened his mouth wide. "Disgusting!" shouted Little Red. "What gigantic, grimy teeth you have, Auntie." Ew. What's the word grimy mean? Grimy. Grimy. It means extremely dirty. And if you look at his teeth, I'll try to get close up here of some of them. He's got hair and some green junk in there, little bugs. He's got all kinds of gross stuff. Down here, there's a bone. So grimy means extremely dirty. And Little Red made the very hungry lion brush, brush, brush his teeth until they sparkled. "Oh, Auntie," sighed Little Red, "what an old nightgown you are wearing." And before the very hungry lion knew it, Little Red had found a much prettier dress for him to wear. This had not been part of the lion's plan either. Do you think the lion looks very happy? He looks a little frustrated to me. A little over it. "Stop!" yelled the lion. "I'm a very hungry lion and my tummy is grumbling." Little Red pointed her finger. "Well, trying to eat children and aunties is very naughty. If you were hungry, all you had to do was ask for some food." The very hungry lion let Auntie Rosie out of the cabinet and said sorry, ever so politely. Little Red gave Auntie Rosie the spot medicine, which worked immediately. Then the three of them gobbled up a whole basket of donuts together. The lion had 5. Soon it was beginning to get dark, so the lion walked all the way back home with Little Red and on his very best behavior, and promised never, ever, ever to try to eat another auntie or any children. But he might be tempted to eat Daddy. No, bad kitty. And that is the end. All right, so let's talk a little bit. So in the story, we talked about how Little Red Riding Hood when she walked into Grandma's house, she was told to come in, and she found, of course, in this story, Wolf, in Grandma's clothing in her bed. And, a lot of people, or, most memorable lines from Little Red Riding Hood are where Little Red says, "Oh, what big teeth you have, what big ears you have." Those lines. In this story, instead of what big teeth you have, what big ears you have, she says, she changes it a little bit. She comments on his messy hair or his messy mane and his teeth in a little bit different way, not really to eat her with, but to just because they're gross. And then finally, the dress. So she kind of changes it up on the lion in this story a little bit. She tries to teach him a lesson instead of her learning a lesson. She's a very smart girl. So the lesson, there's always a good lesson, especially in fairy tales. Fairy tales are meant to teach you something. And in Little Red Riding Hood, the lesson was pretty much the very last line, and it said, "Grandmother made Little Red Riding Hood promise to not talk to strangers ever again." So that's a good lesson for Little Red Riding Hood. In Little Red and the Very Hungry Lion, like I said, she teaches him a lesson. So what lesson did the lion learn from Little Red? I'm gonna let you guys think about that one. What lesson did Little Red and the Very Hungry Lion teach? Okay, so there are a lot of things. And I may have even missed some similarities and differences that you guys may have noticed as we read through the book. So if you can think of any more similarities and differences, then let me know. You guys can always, send Mrs. Fraud a message or me a message, either way. All right, so let's talk about a couple words that we saw in the story. We talked about 2 of them already, and that was chattering. And chattering meant to speak quickly without really saying anything important. Grimy, which meant extremely dirty. And then there was this one, crept. Crept. If you creep or if you crept somewhere, it means to move with your body very, very close to the ground. So it's kind of like you're sneaking a little bit, but you got to be real close to the ground and creep along the ground. All right, my friends, I really hope you enjoyed that story, and I really hope that it was something that kind of decompress and really kind of relax you after. I know you guys are working so hard on all of your virtual classes, and I know your teachers are working so hard, and we appreciate that, my friends. I can't wait to see you guys at school. I'll talk to you later. Bye.